So I just wanted to summarize the critical success factors. Do you mind moving on to the last slide, please? And really emphasizing how changing the dialogue from a women's issue to a business issue has been so incredibly important. Now, I am not in any way dismissing or undermining Women's Network as well. Last night I was speaking at something called Network for Knowledge, which is a huge group of all the city women lawyers in the UK. 150 people were there, and that was only, I think, about half their membership. And sometimes it's very important, not least to build our confidence and to talk about the things that really matter to us, to meet together. But for this, we need men to help to really make the difference. As I mentioned, it's been led by businesses, but supported by government, and that has been incredibly important. To be honest, I think if business hadn't got its act together, government would have imposed much more stringent conditions and made it more mandatory. So I can't underestimate the importance of the top business leaders, having the captains of industry saying, not just putting their names to a page, but speaking on the topic, being interviewed by the newspapers on the topic, speaking at our events, speaking at other events, trying to reach the unconverted as well. They have been our best recruiters of support. And last but by no means least, it's very collaborative. So there's no pride of ownership. We, as I said earlier, are working with all of the diversity businesses that are doing something that is aligned with what we're aiming for. And say it hasn't all been carefully thought through as well. That should be the last confession, I suppose, that actually one of the things that happened when we launched was one of the newspapers, a very influential newspaper here, said, well, 30% Club, it has a worthy ambition but very vague about how it's going to achieve it. And to be honest, the vagueness was quite important because what's happened is we've been able to change direction, to accelerate efforts where it's been evident that we've alighted upon something. We've been able to pilot things that we weren't sure were necessary. So we run a cross-company mentoring organization now for or mentoring for mid-career women. And I didn't know if that was superfluous. I thought lots of companies run mentoring, but actually turned out to be very liberating for the women to talk about what was going on in their lives and work to somebody outside their own organization. And 2/3 of our mentors are men. So they said it opened their eyes as to what the women were experiencing. So I have to say, I don't regret the vagueness. It means as well that as we enter our last year on our official objective, then we have a lot of support from a lot of different stakeholders, including, and this is genuinely my last point before I'll open to any questions, the media. So I am much less familiar with the media in Malaysia. The media are not always hugely supportive of business leaders, and it has been very interesting in this journey that there's been a joined up support from all different types of media, almost unofficial campaign on their part. I think it's regarded as doing a social purpose in this country, and that business and life will be better if we have more gender balance at the top, at all levels. Thank you.
Helena will now be able to take questions from members of the conference. So, ladies and gentlemen, just kindly proceed to the nearest microphone. We've placed them along the aisle. Identify yourself and please present your question. Can we have the first question, please? Yes, go.
Hello, just to introduce myself. My name is Anima Kosai. I'm with the oil and gas industry, a lawyer actually. One of the things, Helena, you mentioned is that when you first approached these chairmen, they weren't so supportive, but you said eventually they became almost evangelical in approach. What made them see the light? What did you do?
Well, I'm not sure it's something I did, but there were two things probably. One was the pressure from their friends, their peers. And I'm sure it's the same. I mean, for me, it seems the same almost the world over, that when you get the chairman or CEOs of the top companies in a country, it's a close-knit group, close-knit community. They tend to know each other, respect each other. And so the early movers on this were very persuasive to some of their dissenting colleagues. I think the other thing was that they gradually realized that they were looking very old-fashioned, and that actually the mood of the moment, the zeitgeist, as we would put it, was very much pointing into the direction of getting with this program. And that was something, as I mentioned at the end, the media encouraged, but I think there was a realization that they would be left behind. I mean, no company wanted to be the last all-male board on the FTSE, and Glencore, the mining company, was, and were desperate. I mean, they were calling every headhunter for female executives who could qualify, and in the end found somebody who's a very talented Canadian previous mining executive, and were delighted. I mean, I got a call from the chairman saying how excited he was. So I think it was those two factors, and I would encourage, because obviously one of the things I'm hoping is that there may be appetite for a 30% club in Malaysia. That one of the things that I'm hoping is that one can overcome the initial hurdles. Every country that we have gone into so far starts with this skepticism, oh, it's a women's thing, or what's it got to do with me? So it's possible.
I love that answer. So I just want to say something. I don't know if the media is here. This is a challenge from all these would-be women directors and the existing women directors. Who are those snazzy business leaders out there who's going to be the first ones to jump on and say, I've got 50% women on my board, for example. And then we want to see the rest of the leaders follow. Yeah?
Thank you very much. Next question, Dato' Hafsa.
Yeah, just to answer that, I've got 30% women in my boards. Helena, I'm just bowled over with the statistics that you showed. Can't help but to take pictures on that. You did something right, something radical, pushing from 12.6% in 2010 for women in UK boards to 23.8%, or almost 24%, almost doubling up. And I can't help but to agree with you. The way that we need to do to actually push the bar higher is to self-destruct that 30%. What did you do? Yeah. That radical, action that was able to double up in less than 4 years from 12.6% to 23.8%. We'd like to learn on that, because it looks like here in Malaysia, while we have got a policy that wants to move up by 2016 to 30%, is moving, albeit at a very slow pace. Can we learn something from you? Thank you.
Sure. So I have to emphasize that, and I gave the brief story of when I had set up a women's network, that I had seen the slow bit too, and so I can compare and contrast the before and after, and what was that shift. And I mean, I've mentioned already, but I'll reinforce it, because it really was the secret of it, and that was getting the men, that not just any old men, dare I say it, but really the leading men of the country, to get behind this and actually make it something. This is their boardroom that we're talking about. This is their boardroom. So when they say to the headhunters who couldn't find, they say, the right women, or to the shareholders who are asking them about board effectiveness, my board is more effective now because I have women on it, and other types of diversity too. It's not women as perhaps the starting place, not the end. Then it's very, very powerful. And I have interviewed some of the chairmen. I don't think he would mind me sharing the story now, but well, perhaps he would. So I'll keep it anonymous. But one of the big banks here, who was chairing one of the failed banks after the financial crisis, he took on that role following the financial crisis, and he had a clean slate for the board. So he had previously, there was 17 members of the board, 17, so far too big a board, one woman, and he started afresh. So he told me about the process he went through, and he was an early believer in this. He realized he needed to do something radical to use your word there, because that company was under such pressure. And he told me that he literally, he orchestrated a board, so not just that it would have at least 30% women, but also so that it would have international experience, so that it would have a younger person who might have more digital knowledge. And he masterminded this shake-up. And that, I think, has been another point here, that in this country, and not in America, I have to say, this country, there has been a self-reflection about company boards being ill-equipped for the challenges of the future, the way they were comprised. And that we needed to have, the status quo had contributed to the financial crisis, and we needed to change. So I have to say, I feel lucky. I don't want to take the credit, because a lot of these things came together. We just seized the moment and said, that means you need 30% women on the board at least. So perhaps that doesn't answer it, but it's this confluence, it's different factors coming together. But first of all, if we can get the men to support this and the media to support this, you will have a following wind.
We have time for one more question. So can we have the final question, please? Just raise your hand. Yes, please. Yes, go ahead. The microphone is on. Just speak straight into it.
Thanks. Hi, my name is Rumaizon. I'm a little bit confused. What actually worked? Was that the fear factor of not being left out? You know, the boys' club needed to be together, so therefore I don't want to be the last one to have all-male board. Or was it the business-led initiative, business-led challenge? What was the real content of that business-led change or challenge initiative all about?
So I guess it's a bit of fear and greed in this one. So the fear of not being left out has enabled us to get at least one woman on every FTSE board and nearly all the next size down, and also has made it, say, socially acceptable, if not welcome as a discussion point. The other thing that has obviously happened is clearly that people have now been analysing again since the financial crisis, and which is why I mentioned the shareholders. You know, how do you make sure that you have succession planning in place that is appropriate? How do you make sure that the board is not just you know, people who fill the job description but actually don't engage in a chemistry? And at the same time of all of these initiatives, so say there are 16 efforts, some of them about doing things better, some of them are about not doing things worse, if I can make that. Perhaps it doesn't make sense to say that, but some is about correcting bad things, and other is saying, what is the future? What is the future of work? How do we finally overcome the problem that a lot of women, particularly if they have children, don't stay in the workforce, or if they do, they don't get promoted? And there's been this sort of coalescing of interest in an intense, urgent way. So I can't say that it's been one factor. If I have to pick out one, it's been the men leading, with the media supporting, and with public policies behind the scenes as well. So that's three, really. But it's really hard work. I mean, it's not just me standing up and talking occasionally on the television or something. What happens is there's different programs. So we have, as I mentioned, the schools program. We have an early careers workshops, which are much more about equipping young women with the confidence that they say they lack. We have we have several mid-career programs, including the cross-company mentoring I mentioned. We have efforts with the headhunting community, with the investor community, with universities and business schools. So 3 of the business schools have given scholarships to 30% Club candidates. And we announced 3 scholarships, 2 at London Business School and 1 at Said Business School, at part of Oxford University, just a week ago, to winners from around the world. And they're doing it partly so that they can also create this virtuous, or share in this virtuous circle. So it's very hard to say, and I'm very, very, very conscious that different countries have very different cultural and business traditions, and that the formula, if it is a formula, needs to be nuanced and adjusted. But I do think this idea of saying, okay, don't just tell people what to do, but work with them and make it easier. find the women that could be candidates for their board. Make sure the shareholders acknowledge when the company board has appointed, when the chairman has appointed 2 women when they had none before. Just create a virtuous circle, and then we will hopefully go on to that self-destruction moment.
Thank you very much, Helena, for taking time off so early in the morning to speak to us. There you go.
Well,
big
the
round
sun
of
is
applause
up
for
now.
you. And Helena, we wish you
Thank
a
you.
wonderful day ahead.
Thank you so much for the time. Thank you, and I hope you have a good day. Thank you.